Okay, this is a hand apparently I did incorrectly.
What incorrectly?
So I consulted Poker Snowy, so here's the hand. I got queens, and I got 2 married into the queens. So here we go. I am under the gun +1. I raise, I get called. And here Poker Snowy says with this 1 overcard, I should bet quarter pot. So I shouldn't check here on the flop. I should bet this medium strength hand because it's very unlikely that somebody else had a king and I could represent the king. So for some reason Snowy wants me to bet quarter pot. So Snowy wants quarter pot size bet. See, this is what Snowy wants. For me to raise, they call, everybody calls. I get 2 callers and I get a check, and then here I'm supposed to bet quarter pot or call or check. So check is correct actually. But once the king comes on the turn, I'm supposed to bet quarter pot, which is interesting. So I check, and ace king is going to ace king is supposed to bet quarter pot. So he does. He's supposed to bet quarter pot. Right there, player 4 is supposed to bet quarter pot, and he bets 0.7. He bets 0.7 pot. Okay, and I'm supposed to fold right there. Right there on the flop, I'm supposed to fold. So, and the EV is about 0.10. The EV is 0.10, so it's not that big of a deal. It's not a blunder per se, just an error. So it wasn't too negative the EV to call, but anyways. The next card is a king, and see, on the one hand, I was supposed to fold on the $4 bet, 0.7 pot bet from player 4 who bet on the flop, bet 0.7 pot. But once the king comes out, now all of a sudden queen is supposed to bet quarter pot on the turn. Me as the hero on player 3 with queens. So I'm supposed to bet quarter pot, even though on the flop I was supposed to fold to the 0.7 pot bet. But I guess it has to do with the different run out maybe? So let's change that king on the turn. Okay, it does make a difference. So if the turn was a jack, then all of a sudden I'm supposed to just call, because it's more likely that he would have a king, I suppose. But if that were changed out to a red king, then all of a sudden I'm supposed to bet quarter pot on the turn. So it has to do with the likelihood that he has a king. So the next step is player. So if I were to bet quarter pot, and if I were to get raised, then I'm supposed to fold. So that is kind of fine with that last part, with folding after being raised. Let's go back to the hand. On the flop, I was supposed to either check or bet quarter pot. I checked and I got villain in the cutoff to bet $4. I'm facing a $4 bet, which is 0.7 pot, and I'm supposed to fold here according to Snowy. But had I bet quarter pot on the flop and got a small raise, then I call. But if I got a large raise, Snowy wants me to fold the queens due to the overcard. I suppose it's the overcard plus the flush could get there, so the flush still has equity against me, against the queens. So I'm either beat or villain has a lot of equity against me. So at some point, maybe you do want to look to fold the queens. So I do understand what Snowy is saying, not that I think about it. So let's continue. So I call, which I wasn't supposed to since I didn't bet the flop, and it's a 0.7 pot bet. So now king, when the king comes out, Snowy wants me to bet quarter pot. So this was a mistake. And then once he bets again, I'm supposed to fold. So let's pick it up from Snowy. This is the scenario where I checked and I was supposed to fold to the $4 bet over here, but I didn't. I called. Snowy thinks that's a mistake to call right there for the 0.7 sized pot sized 0.7 pot bet. But anyways, I call. But once the king comes on the turn, I'm supposed to bet quarter pot. But I checked, which is a mistake. It says I'm supposed to bet quarter pot due to the fact that he's less likely to have a king now. So I'm supposed to bet quarter pot. And then I check, which is incorrect according to Snowy. See, incorrect. So once I check, then player 4 bets, and he wasn't supposed to. He was supposed to just check with his flush draw since I already called on the flop. So player 3 calls. So that seems to be correct, which is interesting. So it must have to do with the fact that it's just very hard for him to have a king, and he still does have the flushes. Let's see if I had a queen flush, if that changes anything due to removal. So no change there. Okay. The card removal, Snowy doesn't really care too much about that. In any case, he bets 9. I'm supposed to still call. See, the card removal is if I held a spade, then he's less likely to have a flush draw. He's less likely to be on a draw. Just very slightly though. So Doug Polk makes a big deal about this, but in reality, Snowy doesn't really give it too much weight in most cases. So the villain bets $9, and the villain bets $9, and I'm supposed to call due to the fact that it's very hard for him to have me beat at this point. So I go ahead and I do call in the real game, and the river bricks as a 3. None of the draws get there. Actually, there's only one draw. And player 4 go. I check, which is correct. I'm supposed to check. Now player 4 bets $35, and I'm supposed to fold to that, which is probably correct because he has shown 3 streets of strength. So in the actual game, he does jam. On the turn I do call here, and then the river bricks as a 3 of hearts, so I check, and he puts me all in at $34, so I have to call $35. So I was supposed to fold here. So I was supposed to fold there, according to Snowy. So that's interesting. By the 3rd street. So I guess he was looking at the aces and the 3s, and he jams. He could have just taken his showdown value and he didn't have to jam, because ace could be good there, or ace could be a split pot. But he jams. I guess he was trying to get me off an ace. But Snowy says I'm supposed to fold. So I'm gonna trust Snowy for the most part as the correct move. So let's see what the EV difference was when I do call. If I called it all in, it's supposed to be negative 32 EV, so it's a really large, it will be a blunder. I mean, that is huge. Negative 32. So I lost money on that hand in EV. So based on equilibrium, based on all hands in my range, based on the way the villain will play all his hands, I would lose money in that scenario based on all hands in my range. Now, should he jam? He shouldn't. He just should take his showdown value with aces. There was still a chance that on a pair board that he could win, although chances were not very good. And he shouldn't have jammed though, although that was a very strong move. But I was basically uncapped, I believe. Let's see if I was capped or not. So I raised, yeah, so I raised, he called, so I was uncapped. I check, and I call, so I'm still uncapped. I still am uncapped. So I could have had a king and played it just that way. So it was probably not a good jam. But I did raise, so I would have very few kings in my hand as well, because I did raise pre-flop. So I would only have king queen, ace queen, I mean king, aces, ace king, king queen, king jack, king 10 suited. So I do have some kings in my range. Plus I have all the pairs like jacks and queens, aces, and jacks and tens. Probably wouldn't call turn on the, if I had a 10, maybe I would. Although I think Snowy wants me to fold the 10. Snow even wants me to fold the queen at some point before the second king came out even. But also though, I was supposed to bet the flop. But if I had bet the flop, quarter bet, and he raised and I called, then I would have capped my range because I would have checked the turn. So, unless I bet the turn, no, I should check the turn and check it over to him and let him take the lead. Well, the question of whether I capped my range is interesting because on the flop I did check and I just check called. I didn't check raise, so I capped my range. So my range was capped on the flop and on the turn. But I could still have the king and played it just that way. So this concept of capped range really isn't as cut and dry.
The Subaru.
So this question of whether I was capped or not, I guess it's not as cut and dry as you would think, because really I raised from the under the gun +1. He's in the cutoff. Everybody calls, and I check to bluff catch. So I did cap my range there, but Snowy says I'm supposed to take the lead on just the one high card. I have a very strong hand. I'm supposed to bet quarter pot. And then if I get raised large, I'm supposed to fold. If I get raised small, I'm supposed to call. But I checked, and he bet 0.7 pot, and I'm supposed to fold there, but I call anyways. But when the second king comes out, then I'm supposed to lead, because he does not have a king at this point. It's very hard for him to have a king. I mean, so I'm supposed to lead quarter pot, but I check, which is Snowy doesn't agree with that. I'm supposed to bet. Snowy just says I'm incorrect there, straight out. So the move was incorrect according to Snowy. So I'm supposed to right now bet quarter pot because the king came out due to removal. He's very unlikely to have a king. And then if I lead quarter pot and I get raised large, I'm supposed to fold. But anyways, I check on the turn, and here I'm supposed to call. This is correct. Snowy does say I should call due to card removal. It's very unlikely for him to have a king. And there are flushes here. But once the river breaks, then I am supposed to fold because I've faced three streets of aggression. So queens don't hold up very often, and I will be losing money in the long run. But let's go back to the turn again. Due to card removal, I can still call on the turn because it's very hard for him to have a king. So my queen should still be good because I've played it as a bluff catcher. I've underrepped the strength of my hand, and I've played it like a bluff catcher. So these are the nuances, and I can't say I still fully understand it all, and I still don't know exactly what decision to make 100% of the time, but I have some idea. And the take-home point is that at some point I'm supposed to fold the queen, but also at the same time, a different consideration is that card removal makes it very unlikely that he has a king. So then all of a sudden I could call this $9 bet on the turn, because the flush draw is still there. On the other hand, you know, on the flop, when I face that 0.7 pot bet, I was supposed to fold, but then that was before the card removal. So the different considerations include queens is lower than king, but then on the turn when the king paired, there's card removal. So queens again go up in value due to the fact that his ranges became so much narrower, his value range becomes so much narrower. So he could have aces, he could have ace king, king queen, but there are so many bluffs because he can have very few combos of kings. It's very few narrow range, ace king, king queen, king jack, possibly suited. So if it's suited, then there's only 2 combos of king jack. So that's very few. So normally there's 16 combos of any 2 cards. So that's a long lesson. It is interesting though. Lots to think about.